Today I got with me, well, this is Brad Kramer, Strategic Account Advisor. Probably a lot of the people on the call know me, but I will be joined by Michael Zeveld. Michael is one of our lead architects on staff here that works really closely with Revit and also visualization software like 3ds Max Design. And today we wanted to go through and kind of show you guys some of the updates in Revit 2015. And also, Autodesk announced about a month ago there was a mid-year release called R2. So today we're going to kind of guide you guys through some of the important updates with 2015 and with the R2 update, kind of show you some of the new features. Hopefully it'll be an informational session for you guys. Just so you know, this broadcast will be recorded and will be available after the presentation is over. So with that, and then we've got the live lab learning. Of course, we have web-based training for our customers. So you can register for that stuff through appliedsoftware.com. We actually have a Revit update class you can attend as well. So that's just available for you guys. So if it's something of interest, make sure to make your way to our website, livelablearning.com, or you can reach it through our main domain at www.asti.com. We also have a couple upcoming webinars that might be of interest to some folks on the call. The first one we're going to do before the Thanksgiving break. It's going to be on Panzura. Panzura should be something of interest to anybody on the call with multiple offices working in Revit. Panzura is a hardware-based device that utilizes cloud storage and can also accelerate Revit collaboration within multiple offices. So that's been kind of a sore spot for many years with Revit and collaboration, and really Panzura is kind of marketed and has a great file locking system that works really great with Revit. So we're going to kind of do an overview webinar on the 20th, so hopefully you folks that have multiple offices or folks that are interested in cloud storage and stuff like that, that'll be a great webinar to join. Also, we're going to be doing one in December on the 16th on InfraWorks. InfraWorks is a planning tool. It's actually built off of Navisworks, which is a 3D aggregate BIM tool that probably many of you are familiar with. But InfraWorks is a planning tool that integrates multiple file formats just like Navisworks for planning purposes. So you can integrate GIS data, Revit models, Civil 3D, MicroStation, etc. for great 3D visualization and presentations. And then, of course, in January, we're going to roll into a new product that you'll be hearing about in the next few months called Autodesk 360, which is a cloud-based collaboration tool that works really great with Revit. So hopefully, you guys, some of those topics will be of interest to some folks on the call, and we look forward to having you on those as well. So with that, I'm going to push it right over to Michael Zeveld. Z, take it away. We look forward to the presentation today on Revit R2.
Awesome. Thank you, Brad. I appreciate that. Some good information on the front end there. Like Brad said, we're going to focus on Revit 2015, not only just the new features, but also the R2, which is coming out sort of this in the fall, if you will. And a lot of times people think of new features, they're just over here saying, scratching their head saying, what are you talking about? So we're hoping to sort of put some of that stuff at ease, also just to share with you what some of these new features can do and how they can benefit you, in your organization. And some of y'all might already be on Revit 2015. Some of you might be on an earlier release. So this is hopefully a way to look at, what's on the horizon, what's out there, and also with this R2 release specifically as well. So first of all, I'm just glad that y'all are here. I know your time is important. Appreciate you kind of taking your lunch time. Hopefully you're spending it eating and watching as you're going. We're really going to, like I said, just go through some of the overview of Revit architecture and some of the other enhancements as far as the other disciplines are concerned. So really looking at the new features and getting into some of that as we go. Just real briefly, sort of some snapshot about me. I know some of you on the call I already know, but as Brad mentioned, my name is Michael Zeveld. Everybody just calls me Z. I've been doing this and involved with the software in the AEC industry anyways, about 20 years, into Revit for a decent amount of time, probably 10 years or so, but started back in the old DOS days, so back when it was AutoCAD DOS, very archaic, if you will. So so glad when Revit came along and really changed the game, I think, for us to make it this 2D drafting world. I'm so glad we moved on to that. So enough about that, I guess, about me. So looking at some of the new features and even some things we're just calling enhancements in Revit architecture specifically, and we'll look at how some of these are specific to the other disciplines. I know most folks might be architecture background on the call, but here's just sort of a big picture overview, because we might not get to every one of these, but I wanted to kind of give you a big snapshot, and we'll get into some of the highlights of those as we go. So some sketchy lines, duplicating views, some other enhancement, anti-alias improvements, that sort of thing. And then also on the Revit structure and MEP side, for some of you folks who deal with that, additional enhancements with some of the analytics, some of the rebar setting, that kind of stuff. So real quick, kind of looking at some of these enhancements, and these are just from 2015. I'm going to get into the R2 stuff, because these are, I think, useful enhancements as well. And even folks that I've run into who have been using 2015 didn't know some of this stuff was even available. So one of these nice, easy tools in here is this sketchy lines. And the sketchy lines are designed to do just that. Take your view and kind of give it a squiggle. Some of y'all probably remember the little add-on app for AutoCAD years ago called Squiggle. This kind of softens up those lines, making it a little bit hand-drawing look, and basically just softening it up for us so it's not this hard-edged specific information. Now, there's some settings in here to make this happen, so you can apply this to any particular view if you want to. It's basically going into the graphics tab under your view and enabling these sketchy lines. So here's just a quick snapshot of that graphic display dialog box, and you can see here where they're listing out sketchy lines. You first just enable them, and it can adjust the slider sort of back and forth to give us results. And there's the jitter, which is the squiggliness of the line, if that's a word, and then also the extensions and how they extend over. And it's kind of a 1 through 10 sort of value, but very easy to do, and it can display in shaded mode or sort of rendered mode, or just however you want to, or just 2D sort of black and white sort of lines, but shows it really nice. And I got an example here, just a quick screen grab of a view. You've probably seen maybe that house before, of this model, just typical settings. And then here it is applying those jitter sort of lines with color applied. So it's a nice way to kind of soften that up for you, and send along to a client or some other folks, just to get that better kind of look and feel for you. Something else that's sort of in line with that is what they call these anti-aliasing improvements, and basically that's to help give us these smooth lines. Sometimes you'll see jagged, kind of rough-edged lines. This is allowing us to sort of smooth that out, and we can actually save or preset some of these things up in the Revit INI file as well. Also, some ray tracing. So when you change the view of your display of your view, basically to color shaded, you can do this ray trace option. And what that does is basically allows us to have this iterative sort of rendering happening in our view, and the longer you leave it sit there, the more it starts to actually refine the rendering itself, which is really kind of cool. So it'll sit there and sort of define that smoother and better as we get into it. Okay. Another area we can sort of look at here before we get too far into the R2 specific stuff is we've made some enhancements, or they've made some enhancements to this schedule material sort of takeoff in scheduling components. Basically, we can start to control how the information is displayed on the sheets, and we can actually create schedules that include graphical information And so they've made a lot of nice enhancements on that end to display that sort of stuff. So some good improvements on the scheduling side. I'm trying to save some of the deeper stuff here as we get into the R2 side of it. But another thing they've gotten into is revision clouds, and actually being able to delete the revisioning clouds, and actually more control on how we lay those out or sketch those. I'm sure most of you don't get into revisions, but I know in my projects I've had to do revisioning and make changes. So this allows us to kind of use some standard drawing tools, lines, arcs, circles, and then basically get those converted into the revision clouds themselves. And then there's also an option to reverse the clouds. You know, the arc side out is how we're showing it, but there's also a spacebar option. You can flip it so it's almost like the pointy side is facing out, allowing to be used for different aspects of our project. I've seen some folks, some government type work show those clouds sort of flipped in, and that indicated something a little bit different for their particular purposes. All right, so a lot of other areas here I can get into with some enhancements, but I really wanted to touch on, and our focus of this, I just wanted to point those out, is this R2. And the R2 is part one of two, I guess, releases that Autodesk is moving towards in a full version release. So there's usually in the springtime the full version release, and then they're looking at this fall sort of to be this enhancements sort of release. And a couple of things in here that we're going to look at: Dynamo, Salon, this energy analysis, some improvements to these wall joins, IFCs, improvements to some shaft openings, site design. Those are sort of some of the highlights, if you will, and then this select tag, host tag. So let's first talk about this Dynamo. And Dynamo specifically is a visual scripting language tool that basically taps into or leverages the Revit API to enhance some behavior. So an example might be we have maybe windows across the facade of a building, and we want them all to grow a certain percentage is a scenario. So instead of going into each individual family, we can use this Dynamo program to say, hey, this is my little script or routine. Take all these windows and increase them by a certain percentage. And that could be obviously casement and different size windows, different things, but it's a visual programming tool to really manipulate potential parameters across a Revit model. Now, this is part of the R2 release. It used to be you could actually download it separately, but the way it works is the Dynamo component runs outside of Revit, and it actually taps into these packets or capsules, if you will, to make these dynamic changes. And here's sort of an example of showing these capsules that I was mentioning with these connectors that perform the functionality, if you will. So Dynamo really provides this visual programming environment, to drive this geometry or create this logic for elements and data within Revit. And Dynamo is a open source program, if you will. And the idea is that there's going to be these packets that you could snap in, so you don't have to be really considered a programmer. You can actually grab a packet that says, hey, I want to take this little capsule that somebody created, or Autodesk is producing content to say, here's a way that I can collect up all the sheets in a certain phase of my project. Okay, that's a little module. And then the next module would be to batch print all those together. So outside of basically Revit, I'm compiling these little packets and then telling Revit to run that information to perform or conduct a certain event or sequence. If you're curious and if you're interested in learning more about that, you can go to this dynamobim.org website, and again, it will give you some more information. There's actually a link to download it separate if for some reason you didn't get that included with the R2, or just want to have it on a different computer or something. But it's really sort of this programming language direction that Autodesk is heading to do these kind of complex, interesting geometry. Even some of these funky shaped buildings and facades you see, that's another way that those can be used. And it is new. It's probably not something that everybody in the organization is going to be using. It's maybe more of a select type of group of people, but knowing that that capability is there is, I think, key to getting into some of these common repeated functionality tasks, but also some unique design components.
Hey Z, this is Brad. One thing with Dynamo too, if it's something, for the folks on the call that are interested in it, we offer, programming and services, so we could scope out something if Dynamo looks like something of interest, then that we could probably develop for you guys. So just keep that in mind as well if that's something of interest, because I think this Dynamo is going to really grow within Revit as kind of like a programming language of sorts for the users. So just an FYI.
No, it's a great point. I appreciate you you mentioning that. All right, so let's look at this Salon integration, and basically this is a way to personalize the building performance analysis that folks, and a lot of times it's MEP folks, but more so architects nowadays, by running these analysis, and it's a way to doing some dashboarding and charting to make it a little bit more user-friendly and effective for you. So this was a project in the labs at one time, but then it released out to this R2. But basically allows us a way to build and create these different charts and dashboarding within Revit via Green Building Studio. And some of y'all are probably familiar with that for doing energy analysis and kind of that deeper level calculations. But for example, when we're doing some different energy analysis calculations within the Revit model itself, and we're doing the analysis, we can now take that out and actually get into this on the right side, which is the actual dashboarding tool, and actually pull up the modules that are of most value or interest to us. Because it used to be on the left side, we'd get a report and it'd say, here's all the information, deal with it, do whatever you want to. We're now via this Salon dashboarding environment, we're able to come in and really decipher or drill down to the information that makes more sense to us specifically. All right, another thing for us in this R2, and again, some of these are just enhancements, so not a lot other than maybe mentioning it specifically, but on these energy analysis related type endeavors, larger models used to be a very big issue, and they've done some improvements to basically reduce the memory usage, so bigger files, bigger models can actually process and run, and that's been a hindrance for folks in the past to sort of avoid using some of this analysis or having to strip out apart their models to only run certain portions of it. So this enhancement, again, you'll kind of see this with some of this R2 stuff, is more enhancements, features, benefits, as opposed to the big release in the spring, which is like, hey, look at all this new stuff. Obviously there's still new stuff in here, but it's kind of fit and finish, making things work a little bit more efficiently for us. So something like this, they just kind of program stuff on the back side, but it's making it more efficient for us to use on a daily basis. Also here, talking about walls specifically, being able to simplify the control of the walls to join in a plan view. We can now select multiple walls, intersecting walls, and with a single click allow them to join or disallow joins, as opposed to doing them kind of individually or separately. And then we can specify display options to clean up the joint, don't clean it up, or use specific view settings. So another sort of kind of smaller component, but could be very effective to how we would use some of those items. Makes our life a little bit easier, a little bit smoother as we go. IFCs. I don't know how many folks are getting in or using IFCs specifically, but then this is more the IFC references or dealing with specific phases. We can basically use the existing geometry from a linked IFC model, Okay, so we can actually bring that model in as reference background for contextual purposes. And it used to be you could sort of do that in the past, and you could just see it and that was it. But now we're able to actually get into dimensioning, aligning different components to that, actually snapping to some of these elements, and making it a little bit more functional for us. So here's just sort of a an IFC file. We basically export it out. I would link it back into Revit, and being able to do some dimensioning. Those are Revit dimensions on there. Used to be you couldn't touch any of that stuff. Well, now again, it's making it more functional for us, a little bit user friendly. There's actually been some workflow discussions about, hey, I'll just IFC out my model and then bring it in because I'm going to do interior design, and maybe they didn't split it up for a central file or something. So these IFCs list out in our browser, kind of down by the family listings, if you wanted to get in and actually see what was going on. But being able to dimension it actually brings in the IFC as a three-dimensional model, and you can dimension snap and do different things to it, which is a very useful and an effective tool as well. Okay, something even silly, or not silly, but as simple as shaft openings. Love shaft openings, using them for elevators, stair towers, that kind of stuff. They recompiled this a little bit to just streamline it, and for the creation of these, where they did something as simple as put these items in order. So instead of base constraint, base offset, top constraint, top offset, it used to not be in order. It was kind of jumbled. You weren't sure where you're actually looking to grab these. And then primarily the improvement on the shaft openings is it's referencing the level or the view or the plan that you're sitting in. So if you're on level 1 and you go and create this, it's actually going to pick up that you're on level 1 and use that as its base value or the base constraint. It used to be you'd be on different views or different levels, and it'd always just throw out some random level or something. But thinking, hey, you're in the plan view that you're going to make this shaft, you want it associated with that. Again, just a small sort of element, if you will, to help make our life a little bit easier. Okay, another improvement I think is pretty neat is in perspective views, we now have the ability to do some enhancements. So we're now able to basically do some editing per se. So things like moving, aligning, and pinning and unpinning different elements. So being in a 3D perspective camera shot view, I did a little screen grab of the modify panel. You can see alignment, moving, pinning, and some of these other tools in here that just makes looking through that perspective view a little bit more functional. I know we used to be able to select objects, and that's fine, but we really couldn't do a whole lot, like for alignment or doing some other tools. And this really opens us up to make working in those specific views a little bit more functional and actually purposeful. Also, what it's doing is this reset target tool. It's actually restoring the position of the camera to the center of the field of view. So if I had a shot and I've been moving it or adjusting or doing some different things, if I select that object and basically recenter or focus it in on that particular object for us. Another thing that's in here is this toggling between different perspectives. So one thing that we have to do is basically be able to change the elements, for example, or toggle between them. Is this functionality allows us to jump between the two, but this again is only part of this R2, or there's also this maintenance available. But these editing tools allow us to again get in here, use the actual 3D shot, make it more functional for us to do some different settings within there. All right. Referencing other views, we all probably know, if we're familiar with Revit, cutting sections, and you a lot of times do that reference other view. But if you're like me, I'm like, what was the name of that view? I mean, I want to do a wall section on this side of the building, but I don't know what the name of it was on the other side. Well, they basically introduced this search function So when we pull up to cut a section or create a view, and we choose this reference other view, which I've checked off here, it actually now kind of squeezes in this little search menu in here. And basically it's a list of, it's going to search through a list of available views, and we can start to enter in the information with those. So like for example here I'm just saying, hey, wall, and this is, when we're creating, call outs, elevation section, detail, that kind of stuff, and we choose that reference other view, but it'll start to search through it, and then we can hopefully select that a little bit easier as opposed to randomly picking the wrong one, and then what do you do? But this helps to drill it down. So if you can kind of key in a specific, is it a detail, is it a wall, is it a whatever it may be, this is going to be a faster way for us to reference those other views, which again, nice small thing I think is fantastic for us. And they kind of moved this whole panel, instead of being just down in the options bar where you used to have just one row, they've now put it into this own reference panel up in the ribbon itself. So you got a little bit more room, if you will, to see this a little bit more effectively. Okay, so I think this was kind of neat too. And another kind of one of the buried things in this R2 is this reveal constraints. This is allowing us to take a look at all the dimensions that have constraints associated with them. It's basically this troubleshooting mode or reveal mode, that was what they call it. So down in the view control panel, down way at the end, kind of unnoticed actually, there's this little dimension symbol, and panel lock's kind of hard to see. I tried to get a bigger view of it here, but basically that's the toggle, if you will, to see what's going on from our dimensions. So here's just a typical floor plan in regular viewing mode, and you're like, I wonder if that has some kind of constraints to it. I tried moving something and it like pulled my whole building with it, but I really need to look at what is constrained, what's not constrained, so I get just a better understanding of it, because as you all know, sometimes you can over constrain elements and the whole thing is rigid and you can't really move it or do anything with it. So this reveal constraints is actually pretty neat. So hitting that toggle, turning it on, I now get this, what I call this, detective mode, if you will, of displaying the specific elements that have constraints associated with them. Puts a red box around our view. Actually up in the left corner there it says reveal constraints. But now I can see those two dimensions that I'm displaying here actually have constraints. They have some locks associated with them. And it looks like there's also a reference line running through there that may be locked or constrained in some form or fashion. But at least this way I can get a better understanding of why my whole building is being pulled from one direction or the other. So this is a huge improvement for us. All right. Just a more blurb mention, if you will. Revit linking the files. There's improved performance for linked files, even if they're not visible in a view. The Revit's typically dealing with it in general. They've done some back-end stuff to just make that load faster and the model still run efficiently. It's just one of those small things that you're like, oh wow, it just seems to run a little bit faster. So, but again, just wanting to point that out for you, because I know some people are using this process of making the link not visible, thinking that's going to improve some stuff, but really it's still dealing with it in the background. So that's been enhanced on the backside for us. Okay, I was excited about this because I've seen this with some other products, other design software, different things, but exporting out our PDF set, basically I thought it would be so great if the links of my section markers were actually true links. I could jump to that that view to see what's going on, and now we can do it. I mean, this might be my most favorite thing of R2, because we a lot of times are sharing PDF files, and a lot of folks are sharing PDF files. and not having to purchase additional add-on programs. There's some other ones out there I'm sure y'all are aware of to do this functionality, but there's a cost and a fee involved with it, right? So this gives us the ability to basically link those views, and it's as simple as you open up your PDF and you click on a section marker and it jumps to that page that it's associated with. It's that easy. And I actually have a PDF here. If I can open it, I think it's going to want to go on my other screen. I got it split here. Apologize about that. I would easily show you, but you'll have to just try it for yourself. It's actually pretty slick, pretty straightforward. All right, another thing they did for the PDFs themselves, and it sounds sort of basic or simple. You know, a lot of times I got a huge set of documents I'm getting ready to print, and you know, there's two radio buttons there. Make it all as one, or create separate little PDF files for you. And typically what happens, I forget to switch that because it just leaves it as that, and I hit, you know, print, and all of a sudden I'm having to sit there, save. Even if I cancel the little dialog box, I'm saving, you know, 50 PDFs, and I just wish it would just cancel that out for me and, you know, let me fix my mistake, basically. And that's what they did. They now present this sort of, you know, last-minute print warning dialog box to say, hey, apparently a lot of people have been doing this, but you're going to print basically all these views, all these sheets as separate files. Do you really want to do that? So it's kind of like that, you know, last minute check. And I think it's great because, you know, maybe I was in a hurry, wasn't paying attention, and this just gives me the opportunity to cancel out of that, because as you probably have ran into, at least my heartache has been, I've had to go through and just sit there, cancel. So really kind of simple but neat feature to allow us to cancel through that and really correct my print choices, if you will. Okay. All right, so let me mention a couple things about schedules. And basically this, what they've added in the schedules is this ability, or easy way, if you will, to add a data row to a schedule. And this is basically up in the panel, in this rows ribbon command panel, excuse me, in allowing us to basically insert these data rows. Actually, they added some new positioning tools just to put that in there, and whether it's a room schedule, area schedule, or whatever it may be, we can now a little bit easier add this data row or insert data row, and just moved it also that it's a little bit easier to specifically find it as well. All right, another nice R2 feature is this select host for tags. And basically, this feature, or more functionality, allows us to reference specific tags and find out if they're orphaned or not, or where they're located. So in my little scenario here, I got 3 doors. One of them, you know, 104 door on the right. Hey, I'm thinking that door is associated with that door numbers. That's good. But now I have 2 doors, 105A. I really don't know which door it's supposed to go to, and you know, there wasn't a nice tool in the past to really help us identify, you know, how we would do this. So now I can find a tag, or kind of an orphan tag as they call it, and basically say, hey, I'm going to pick this tag, and then I get a contextual tag tab up at the top, and it's telling me, hey, go ahead and select the host, or it's actually going to do that for me. It's going to go find the host that it's associated with and basically light up that door, or it could be a room, or whatever tag that you've associated with it. So I now know, oh, that tag is truly associated with this door on the bottom side of my screen here. So it highlights it, lights it up, lets us know, and makes it a little bit easier for us to make edits, make changes, whatever. Again, just a nice little tool to improve our life, basically. All right, another thing they added is just some streamlining regarding creating some stairs, basically adding additional annotation or numbers to the stair treads, and also placing different annotation. Actually, some specific default property values in the stairs themselves. So just a nice element to help make our life a little bit easier. And that's what some of these release tool features are. They're just improved settings or enhancements. Even something like this, the thin line settings, basically. You know, when we look at different sessions of Revit, you know, maybe the thin line tools or something, or the different information, this thin line information is basically now stored in the Revit INI, which is a system versus specific session. So if we do some enhancement to different lines, that'll, you know, sort of carry forward as well. All right, so there's some more enhancements that I didn't specifically list on the front of this. Those were sort of just some core of what I figured. Hey, these are the kind of highlights, if you will. This next set of enhancement, R2, and I got to, you know, do a little plug for R2D2 there. But these are what they consider the multidisciplinary enhancements, MDE. So these apply to all disciplines. We are pretty well focused over there on architecture specific stuff, but these are also ones that sort of apply across the board. So one of those is I have listed here is this search, and basically looking through the type selector value and finding a value in the properties palette. They've done some enhancements to that. You've probably used that before. But here's one thing, one of them I really like is this model upgrade. So basically, you know, when we go to open up a file, and you know, it would just say, hey, we're upgrading this, and it's really a warning to help us really understand what's going on if we're going to upgrade our file. It used to be, it just says, you click on the file and it says, hey, good luck, we're upgrading. This is just giving us a heads up, basically saying, we're going to upgrade. You have an opportunity here to cancel this or to go ahead and upgrade it. And, you know, obviously we all know using Revit is not backwards compatible. You know, once you've saved it up to whatever version, you're there. You're stuck there. Now, what this doesn't also point out is that you can still upgrade the model and open it in your current, you know, newest release. As long as you don't save it, you're probably still okay. You know, it's once you save it that you've committed those changes. But if you did click on a model and say, "Oh my gosh, I didn't realize that was an older model. I don't even want to go through the process," because as you all know, sometimes it takes a while for this stuff to run through this, you know, upgrade sort of process. But if you are moving towards that upgrading the model, it'll actually start to go through that process and gives you a little dialog box to just some general information. You know, it's interesting. Oh, hey, it's coming from release 2014. Fantastic. You know, I'm bringing it up to 2015. And even at this point, you still get an option down there in the lower right to say, let me cancel this upgrade. I don't want to do it anymore. They do have a link in there in that dialog box that basically throws you to a help menu and tells you what that means when you upgrade it. But you know, at least giving us a warning that we can kind of stop and think about this. Another option in here is basically, you know, when we edit and load a family, a lot of times you'd edit and say load it into the load the family into the project, and pretty soon I got all these other, you know, Revit families sitting open, and you know, I got to go back and basically tidy that up. So now this automatically closes the family after I load it into a project, and just saving me some time and not having to kind of babysit that information. Again, something small, something unique for us, just makes things a little bit faster and more efficient for us. Another enhancement on here, you know, when we import link a model, a file, I usually tell people, hey, it would keep every setting in here, you know, to what layers I bring in and inverting the colors and all this kind of stuff. But now the default is set to this auto origin to origin. which is pretty typical what people do. But if I linked in the file and I turned around and came right back into that same dialog box, it would save all the settings except that. It would default to something else. So now it's out of the box or default install to this auto origin to origin. But if you for some reason use something else, or shared coordinates, or center, or whatever it is, then the software will remember that value. So now you can kind of go in there, make those settings, do your linking, and then for floor plan 1, let's say you're going to link in a file, when you move up to level 2 and go to link in those, it will remember those specific settings as well. All right, another element in here for Revit linking in basically these closed work sets. So when Revit, the link is not visible in the model, we can basically go and look and manage links and basically tell us the status of it, that it's in a closed work set, or it's not displaying it, but basically it's giving us some more information of what's included in our model and basically what's not. Okay, so it gives us some just a little bit deeper dive. Now those are the big chunk of the R2 specific releases. There's a whole series that I mentioned at the very front end of just what's new in 2015, and I'd love to get to those, and I think we're kind of being short on our time, but here are some things I wanted to also share with you that I'm calling them additional features, or sort of upcoming down the road. And Brad mentioned, I think, maybe 1 or 2 of these, but one is right now they're just calling it Skyscraper, which technically it's in lab still, so this is not part of the R2, but I just want to share this with you all. I think it's good, relevant information. It's going to be called this Revit Collaboration, and it's going to be available December 7th. And basically what this is allowing us to do is a new way of collaborating using our Revit and extending it into the cloud for work with multiple disciplines. So architect, engineer, civil, whoever it is, outside of your sort of organizational walls, all to collaborate with basically putting your central file in the cloud. It's doing all this behind the scenes for you, and then basically having a sort of instant messenger sort of tool that we could be collaborating with those folks. There's very high level sort of conversation on this, but it's basically allowing us to do this full integration collaboration with different email messages and meetings and markups, and who's in the model, what's going on, and really making that a really effective tool. So when you're going through this process and going to basically run this in the cloud, we can open up documents either from a 360 location and upload them to your computer, or run those from the cloud. And once that's activated, Revit gives us some additional tools, this online tools, once we decided to engage this collaboration, which is just in there by work sets, and now gives us the ability to open up these files, upload, do some different elements with that, and basically be sharing and collaborating with the folks in our project. And these are just some quick sort of screen grabs of the instant messaging components in here to what projects am I working in. On the right, it's talking. I'm talking with Robbie there, who is in our organization. Basically, hey, what are you doing on the model? How are things going? But also then getting into synchronizing, updating, doing a little text messaging of, hey, I thought you were going to move that over, or something like along those lines. So again, just some more collaboration type tools that are coming down the road. Also, I briefly wanted to mention about this lighting analysis enhancements or tools that they put in here. And this is basically almost like the com checks some folks have done, and the true lead quantifiable tables, if you will. So it's taking the Revit model, analyzing this online for us for daylighting purposes, and giving us basically either a pass-fail scenario, allowing us to truly document, and use this as a record for some of our lead qualifications, and to basically share that within our in our model itself. All right, another thing I just wanted to briefly mention on, and I think in conversations we've had with some of you all, things like Kobe. There's been some enhancements to Kobe, and again, these are what I'm calling these add-ons or additions or something, but items that are available for you. Obviously, just available in the 2015. But basically, Kobe, for those you aren't as familiar with it, it's the Construction Operations Building Information Exchange. So basically, it's data that's being created and generated from Revit, and how do we basically share and pass that on to the folks on facilities management, or just looking at how do we further extend this data. So there's this Revit add-on for Kobe specific stuff where we can basically install it. It's this Kobe extension is what it's called, and we can start to evaluate a little bit deeper with our model information and start to extract or pull out information regarding the model itself. So information as far as where is this building located, what category are you going to use Omni-class, and some of this may be too deep, and I don't want to get too deep on this, and what kind of information I want to pull out, rooms, doors, ductwork, those kind of things, and actually kind of defining that criteria. And I mentioned ComCheck earlier. This is a lot what this stuff is doing. It's basically for looking at the space, what elements are we looking at, what do we want to track, and then it can start to do some basic reporting for us and giving us some results to say, here, I'm reading everything in your model, here are the different zones and information associated with that. And it can be downloaded actually through the Autodesk Exchange. It's developed by this CAD Microsystems. Autodesk specifically asked them or had them create that for them. That's why I put this up here. I'm not giving them kudos, credits, or whatever, but Autodesk basically had them create this for them. So some real good information, and also there's some good stuff on this Kobe extension on Autodesk website if you do a little digging or searching for it, which I think you'll find helpful, especially if you get into that sort of arena. All right, so I wanted to be sort of sensitive on our time, and I wanted to maybe wrap up with the last sort of 10 minutes or so to open it up to some questions. I know some people have been maybe instant messaging, chatting, sending some stuff in, but we want to definitely open it up to questions. So if you have some questions, you can type them in the little panel there, or you can ask the specific questions. So I'm going to maybe turn it over to Brad here to see if we have any questions pending, and also look at some closing comments as well.
Yeah, so we got a couple questions here. Thanks. One is, how does Skyscraper compare to BIM 360 Glue?
Okay, I think that's a great question. Skyscraper is really for in-process, live, still in design, still figuring out, collaborating with the architect and the structural engineer, or the different team members who are outside of your organization. So if you're, central model, that kind of stuff internally, instead of just sending them an email or FTP link sort of thing, you're actually live collaborating with them in the cloud, and it's Revit based. Okay, there's links within the actual Revit application, where the Field and Glue 360 is really the model's been published. You're not changing the design authoring data. You're more saying, we need to move this, or we need to check this, or I'm out in the field looking at something and I'm doing checklists or cross-checking, or making sure it's almost constructed correctly. So both great tools, sort of different spectrums of one is what I'm going to say is in design and being worked on, or the other is a lot of times post design, you're in construction sort of thing, as opposed to design author changes.
Right, and I just want to add, one of the big differences too is Glue is really Navisworks in the cloud, so it's at the core it's a coordination and clash detection tool as well. So which Skyscraper is not going to really do that natively since it's live Revit models. So that's one big difference.
Yeah, good call there.
Yeah. Another question on Skyscraper. I might take this one. How does it compare, or is there a replacement for Panzura? Before we kicked off, I talked about how we're going to be doing a webinar on Panzura before Thanksgiving. They're very similar. Skyscraper is going to be software-based, cloud-based. Panzura is a hardware device. Also, Skyscraper is only going to work with Revit, where Panzura can work with AutoCAD, MicroStation, Word, Revit, whatever. I also think Skyscraper is going to be more of probably a project-based purchase. Maybe you have a couple there's a couple architectural firms in the project. You want to tie in the MEP and the structure for that certain project. You might want to do Skyscraper. Panzura is going to be more of a long-term solution, all file types, and then you can also back all that data up on the cloud. So a little bit of a variance there. I think Panzura is more the long-term solution, and Skyscraper is going to be more of a project-based purchase, in my opinion. So, couple questions. Elaborate a little bit more, Mike, on the SiteWorks tools that Autodesk released with R2.
That's a good point. I didn't really get into the site designer components because they're so involved as far as so many features and tools in there, and I apologize, we could have mentioned it a little bit more. But basically, they released the site designer component, which really gives us the ability to create topography, sidewalks, roadways, lamps, bollards, all that kind of stuff. I think we've actually discussed just doing a separate webinar just on that because of the vast components of it. So I'm glad you mentioned it. Sorry we didn't spend too much time on it, but I think that almost deserves its own sort of attention because of its capabilities.
Yeah, and I was in a kind of a pre-meeting last week. Some of the people on the call were on there as well in Atlanta. I know that's something that's going to be developed a lot more, so I would expect that to expand a lot in the next few releases, so that's something definitely to do. I know it's something architects have asked for a long time, getting site stuff into Revit, so that's really going to expand, and that's why Autodesk acquired that technology, so I would see that being to grow in the next few releases. Let's see here, got a bunch here. If you choose not to upgrade to the latest Revit version, can you still view older models in 2015?
Well, Revit is not backwards compatible, so if we're on 2015 right now, you can obviously open up a 2015 model. You can open up earlier versions as well. It's just if the future, let's say 2016, 2017, I couldn't open those models, those newer models, in my 2015 version. So, and there's no real plans, and has never been in the Revit application the ability to, save down, as we always would like to. But so it's usually the current release or older you can open.
Here's one. What's the difference between A360 Team, A360 Drive, A360, and Collaboration for Revit?
Okay. So I think at their core, they're all online collaboration, sharing tools. The team that was mentioned, the A360 team, that is going to have more interactivity, functionality, more almost live instant messaging sort of chatting components to it, where it's live almost collaboration. Still some of the functionality of sharing files, models. The drive, if you will, which is the 360 where we're sharing documents, I'm uploading them, which is a lot of the components in the team as well, where I can actually do versioning control. I can invite people, uninvite people, so I can really control what documents are up there, and even expanded that to, it's not just design data documents. It's not just Revit per se. It's, Word documents, PDFs, whatever you want up there. And the 360 collaboration almost starts to get into a higher level of that, where we're talking on the surface, and it could be referencing more of like the vault sort of check-in, check-out, versioning control. But again, all of them have a collaboration association with them and extending it outside of your original walls of your office. But from the collaboration side, it's getting into that vault side of checking in, checking out.
Yeah, and one thing with collaboration for Revit, I mean, it's really an accelerator to collaborate with multiple offices or folks. So, I mean, that's one big thing. That's been a sore spot with Revit for a long, long time because it's a database. It's not a stagnant file like an AutoCAD drawing. And that's one thing it's really kind of solving for you guys, Revit collaboration. And as well, you're able to collaborate with people outside your firewall, which is never, there's been some ways to do it, but it's never been very economical. So that's one huge thing for Revit collaboration. I see A360 as more of a static collaboration tool. It's not going to be using native Revit files, and so that's a great way to tie in people like project managers, owners, principals into the BIM process. That's also been kind of a sore spot with the BIM process, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have been going through that, is people that have been using AutoCAD for 20, 30 years are now forced to get into, from a PM level or an owner level, into the BIM process, and they don't know how to use the tools. A product like A360 could be a great tool to kind of tie them into that process as well. So it's just topically two differences. And of course, we are going to be doing an A360 webinar in January, so make sure you join us for that as well. Let's see, I've got some older ones I skipped over, so let me go back. What about, and this, Mike, this is going back, was those questions while you were talking earlier. So what about alignment of an interior elevation with a diagonal IFC wall? Kind of a specific question, but.
Yeah, and that's what I was mentioning on the IFC side, that it is not only just two-dimensional object or in a plan sort of object. You're actually supposed to be able to do surfaces and different components as well. So without kind of getting in there totally understanding the depth of that question, you have more control, where before you could link in an IFC and really couldn't do anything with it, where now that has that selectability features, whether it's actually the different lines or surfaces in there in a plan view or in a three-dimensional view. So I think we'd have to get deeper into that question and maybe test it out specifically, but okay. Again, it's improved functionality. You should be able to grab the different components that are needed.
Okay. Other one on is there a way to automatically add divided lights to windows?
Divided lights, like different specific mullions. Depends on the wall types. I don't think there's an automatic way. You'd have to go into the family and edit it and add those different mullions. So if reading the automatic part of that, I'm going to say no. You still have to go into the family, edit it, and add those divisions and break it up. But they're continually adding more functionality in. So if we're asking the question, I'm sure the folks who are the developers are throwing out those same questions and thinking about it as well. And that's one advantage of something like this R2. We have the big release in the spring of the major yearly release, and then we have this in the fall basically, which is my slide here. I'm just put up. It might take a second to get there. So like the spring release is typically speed and bigger capabilities, and then this fall, this is where Autodesk is sort of going. You're going to see more of this release in the fall, next year as well. It's going to be more user-based tools, new features, and specifically some of the wish list items from the from the users themselves. So I would say, that's probably coming down the road, or hopefully coming down the road, because unless you're into editing the families, there's not a quote-unquote automatic way to do it.
Let's see here. Is there any progress in integration or linking of office specifications within the model with external specification software?
Well, there are, a handful of third-party add-on specification software like eSpecs, for one, that works and integrates pretty well and ties to the different components in the model. Whether that's going to be down the road an integrated part of Revit stands to be seen, but the folks who do use those eSpecs and some of the other ones, they work very well for them. So there is, extension or extendability of the model to use those specification tools. But whether they're going to eventually be part of the base product is, in question.
Okay. When opening up a Revit 2014 template, will it auto update seamlessly into 2015, or will you have to do modifications once it's open and saved to 2015?
Well, and that's potentially a loaded question, right? You can obviously open up the template, save it as a 2015, and the file type, the model itself has been saved. In most cases, the items that you would have in there, schedule, structure, dimensions, notes, parameters, title block, those things, more than likely will work and move forward. But there has been very specific customization I've seen that folks have done where it was very version restrictive. So it would just depend on how much that has been modified, really, if it wouldn't go forward. And a lot of folks usually have a good feel of how much they've really tweaked out that specific template. But majority of the time, everything gets upgraded, everything works really pretty nice, especially if it's one release to the next. It's hard to say if you were going from 2008 to 2015, but if you're talking one or two releases, it's usually pretty fine.
Okay. Got a general question here. Expand on speed and capabilities.
Expand on the speed and capabilities. Well, this ARC2 has really addressed kind of some back-end smaller components, and I mentioned some of those about loading of the file in the background, or processing the IFC file a little bit better, or being able to load faster different components. So all of these are kind of fit and finish components, if you will. But some of them have, on large files, as I mentioned before, how it's loading them a little bit faster. They've gone through on the back end, and maybe it's nothing we really see other than the result of the speed of it, but they're going through and trying to make those things load faster, especially when you get into these bigger, larger files. That's been a pain point for people that, they're just taking a long time to process and get in here. So they're doing a lot of stuff on this backside, especially with these R2 type of release, or even these web updates, to make enhancements and improvements to the product, and so we're not specifically stuck with it. So maybe some of the speed or faster loading enhancements I mentioned may or may not specifically apply to you, but they're addressing all those different elements as it gets further in development, and it's either an improved way of how they load the file or how they process the file, but they're continually looking at performance and how they can increase that and make it more efficient, for us, especially, for even talking about stuff in the cloud. They want those files to be more efficient.
Any info on when the Revit text editor update will arrive?
Your guess is as good as mine. No. You mean, I think like some of these other things, they keep adding features to that, but I haven't personally heard anything specific on that.
Okay. And somebody asked, another question. I sent them the link, but once again, where is Solon used
So Solon is going to be used when you're getting into energy analysis, specifically the Green Building Studio. It's really an enhancement or snap-in module with that. So when we do a report out for energy analysis through Revit, which is being put up in the cloud, this, everything is moving to a dashboard these days, right? So we can kind of snap in your own components and how it's more applicable for you. So if you're doing energy analysis specific stuff, it's going to be while you're using that deeper dive with Green Building Studio, and you can kind of configure that dashboard. And my guess is the additional tools like the lighting analysis and structural analysis and different stuff, that Solon, which is really sort of the back end of how it runs it, will be applied across the board where we can do more sort of analytics of the different analysis. But right now it's just part of that energy analysis in the Green Building Studio.
Okay. Any other questions? Answer all the ones that people have typed up. Some people are starting to leave. Anybody have any other questions? Last call on questions. Last call.
All right.
Let's see. Let me just make sure. I think that's it. All right. Well, I'd like to personally thank everybody for taking their lunch break on the East Coast, and for the people on Central Time Zone, have a great lunch, and we appreciate you guys. Oh, we got one more in here. Is AGI 32 lighting analysis, is it compatible with Revit 2015?
I don't know offhand. I have to verify that. We can do a follow-up. We'll do a follow-up with you on that one.
Okay.
I just don't know off the top of my head.
Okay.
Like Brad was saying, yes, I appreciate everybody's time. I know you're taking your lunch break there, and but we wanted to be able to share with you some of the new features, also at 2015, but also R2. So I thank you and appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks everybody, and look forward to seeing you guys in a few weeks on the Panzera call when we talk about acceleration between multiple offices with CAD and Revit data. So until then, we look forward to chatting with you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.